Well, that was my original plan before. I had you guys on Tuesday, and then we thought of something new, and I forgot. Let's do it.
A little extra.
we should be paying more attention to what's being said.
Welcome to Southminster Presbyterian Church on this Sunday as we kick off a new school year together. And as you can see, we have a ring of bells up here. Higher, or it is on. So hopefully we're getting me mic'd up. There we are. Okay. So again, welcome to Southminster on this Sunday as we kick off another school year together. And these bells are because the children have been practicing all through August. They are the newest bell choir at Southminster. So Jen Winquist will have them during our children's time. So if you're new, do know that we are a welcoming congregation of faith. That simply means that everyone is welcome no matter where you are on faith's journey. We have a copy of today's service and the sermon online. You can get them if you go to our website on Monday morning. They'll be available to you. And of course, we always welcome our folks who are on Zoom. So if you're in the worship space on the end of the aisles are these raised friendship pads, we call them. If you can pass them down, let us know that you're here. It is always helpful for us. And certainly if you are new, do let us know that as well. So many announcements today. Being the kickoff of the year, it's Welcome Sunday, which means we have a wonderful potluck right after worship. If you just make your way back in to the fellowship hall, there will be coffee and drinks for you to get, and give us about 5 minutes. We get the tables out, and then we'll do a quick prayer. Then you can come back into this area, and all the food will be lined up for you to then take back into Peterson Gallery. Also, children and youth and families and whoever wants to are welcome to go out to the back play area. We have a big bouncy house and lots of games for the children and youth and families and whoever. So a few announcements that are coming up. Water to Wine, well, it's coming up today at 2 o'clock. At Craig and Karen Butler's home. So I guess eat real quick and then go home and go get wind up. And then the Mariners gathering is on Friday the 15th at 6 p.m. at Roger and Sharon Davidson's. If you're available next Saturday, there's a church painting project. I'm not sure what they're painting. The outside of the church? Okay. So if you're able to come and help, are there sign-up sheets or?
I would email Rick Collins.
Okay, email Rick Collins and plan to be here at 8 o'clock on Saturday. Next Sunday, while we are doing worship, our friends and neighbors and partners at the Cedar Hills United Church of Pres, they will be having worship, and they are having special guests and imam as well as the pastor that are doing a dialogue sermon. So if you're interested in doing that and want to skip church and Scott's message, know that that's available. The high schoolers and I are going to be going over for that. And then finally, a couple memorials or remembrances. Beverly Galvan, some of you remember her from a while back. Her memorial is at the St. Baptist Episcopal Church on September 23rd. And then I just found out this morning that Matt Schultz's sister passed away on Thursday. So she was in a very short time in hospice, a lot shorter than they had anticipated. So please keep Matt and certainly the family in your prayers. So we have an announcement from the Adult Education Committee, and Dan, right there.
Got the green light. That's good. It's fall, and we've been working on a lot of great stuff for adult education this fall. The format that we've sort of adopted that works most is to have an hour of discussion time after worship on Sunday mornings. But this is something we can't do every Sunday. Like today, there's no way we can compete with a bouncy house. So nothing today. Starting next week, we're going to start an intermittent series on racial justice issues, just mostly talking among ourselves, but with a few special guests along the way. You have to kind of watch the calendar to figure out what's happening on any particular Sunday, but we hope you'll plan to spend some time talking about this. We call it Racial Justice, subtitle, Stuff We Should Have Learned in School But Probably Didn't. and it's very apropos to the national discussion about what's being said about race. The Sunday after that, we're very excited to welcome via Zoom an hour of asking questions and chatting with Kirsten Powers, author of Saving Grace, which was our summer reading assignment. Even if you haven't done your homework, you can come and enjoy an hour with Kirsten. She's a very interesting and entertaining person. And thirdly, I'd like to highlight something that doesn't happen on Sunday mornings. It's going to be something called the Magical History Tour, where we're going to load up a van load of Southminsterites, and we're going to visit some sites around Washington County to highlight history of our area as it relates to indigenous people and as it relates to the health and future of the streams, particularly Fano Creek, and learn some things about sewage and oak trees and a variety of stuff along the way. So if you're interested in that, please let me know really soon. I'm getting a list together. I've got about half a dozen people interested. So let me know this morning or drop me an email as soon as you get home. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dan. So today our lay reader is Ashley Fernandez. Ken Wilson is on piano. Gabby Hernandez is in the choir leading music with Stephen Schaefer as the choir director, and Moses Ram is our technical director. So let's take a moment and pause as we make this sacred space of community. In words from theologian John Lennon, there's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be. All who are able, please stand and join Ashley in our call to worship.
Good morning. Here in this place, here the warriors and wanderers can call on God by name.
Here in this time, we can remember all the ways God has graced us.
Here in these moments, we are reminded that God is with us always.
Here, our Father feels daring enough to step out of comfort into the unknown.
Here in this faith space, we will find the courage to cry out, God, preserve us in every situation.
Amen. The peace of Christ be with you.
Let us offer one another signs of Christ's peace.
How about that sewage tour?
Just to let you know, next week we're going to have a children's sermon about bells. We will. I'm not joking. That's true. Okay, now this is not only Welcome Back Sunday, this is also Welcome In Sunday. So a couple of folks have joined us, and we want to formally invite them forward to formally receive them. So we're going to ask Kaylee Taylor to come up, and Denise Kangas, who coincidentally are also in the choir. You don't have to wear purple to join the church, but it's good. It's okay. Come right down up here. Good. Okay, I'm going to ask Craig to come up. He's going to help us with this too. I have some questions to ask you, and I'm going to prompt you about these. Do you find the life and teachings of Jesus to be an inspiration and a reminder that we live out of purposes larger than ourselves? If so, say, I do.
I do.
Will you do your best to be a disciple of Jesus's, showing his love? If so, say, I will with God's help.
I will with God's help. I will with God's help.
Will you be faithful members of this congregation, sharing in its worship and ministry, and through your prayers and gifts, your study and service, and so fulfill your calling to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? If so, say, I will with God's help.
I will with God's help.
Thank you. Will you devote yourself to our church's teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and prayer? If so, say, I will with God's help.
I will with God's help.
Okay, and we're having a breaking of bread afterwards, so we want to enjoy you guys as new members during that special potluck. So, we have a question for the whole congregation.
All right, do we, the members of Southminster Presbyterian Church, promise to extend the gracious hospitality of the household of God to Kaylee and Denise, with God's help, to live lives worthy of Jesus' care and love? If so, say, we do. We do.
We're all married. Okay. Thank you so much. Good to have you here.
Good morning again. We have a Hebrew Testament reading. Stick with me, it's a little long. Now Jacob loved Joseph more than any other of his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him an ornamented robe. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem, and Jacob said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. He answered, Here I am. Now, so he said to him, Go now, see if it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring word back to me. So he sent him from the valley of Hebron. He came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. The man asked him, What are you seeking? I am seeking my brothers, he said. Tell me, please, where they are pasturing the flock. The man said, The man said, They have gone away, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from a distance, and before he came near to them, they conspired to kill him. They said to one another, Here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. Then we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. But when Reuben heard it, he delivered him out of their hands, saying, Let us not take his life. Reuben said to them, Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but lay no hand on him, that he might rescue him out of their hand and restore him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornamented robe that he wore, and they took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat, and looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels carrying gum, balm, and resin on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And his brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they drew Joseph up, lifting him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they took Joseph to Egypt. Our theme reading today is from Lemony Snicket. Fate is like a strange, unpopular restaurant filled with odd little waiters who bring you things you never asked for and don't always like.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to welcome you back also and welcome the choir back up and the chancel. This morning's choir anthem, Total Praise by Richard Smallwood, is a new piece probably to many people here and in addition to this congregation at large and to the choir. So I just want to give you just a brief what you should know about this composer. So Richard Smallwood, one of the first major Black gospel composer musicians from last century. It's weird saying that now. But he graduated from Howard University in DC and got his undergraduate degree in classical piano and classical voice. And he founded the Richard Smallwood Singers, and he founded his group Vision. And he won his first Grammy for his work on a sort of gospel version of The Messiah, a soulful celebration. But this piece, Total Praise, came out of a time in Richard Smallwood's life in 1996 when he was experiencing immense grief and sorrow. And oftentimes that is where spirituals arise out of, and sometimes really good gospel music as well. The difference being gospel music is total uplift and total praise and worship. So please enjoy. This is probably one of his greatest hits. By the way, Richard Smallwood has had music performed by Destiny's Child, Aretha Franklin, many, many famous artists, pop artists that you might know. So please enjoy this slow gospel piece, Total Praise by Richard Smallwood.
Great start. Great start of the year. Can't wait to hear what's next. Dear God, thank you for a fresh season. Give us what we need to appreciate the bite in the air in the mornings and the new things that are on our front door. Amen. Well, the Bible stands very high among the richest literatures of the world. But more times than not, I think we miss the most remarkable things in its pages. These jewels are right there in plain sight, but we're often looking for something else. We're predisposed to look for high theology or high drama, and so we miss the subtle moves and details that make it as powerful as it really is. At its best, I think the Bible does what Shakespeare is noted for doing, which is to hold up a mirror to nature in such a way that it challenges the reader to ask, could this be me? Those who are self-aware get an eyeful, and the rest, they walk on blind. Now, there are two amazing instances of this, I believe, in this morning's fascinating story, which Ashley read, half the book of Genesis practically. First, we're told that the sons of Jacob, 10 of Joseph's 11 brothers, put Joseph, the brother they're terribly jealous of, the one who got the fancy coat, in a pit. And then it says, they sat down and ate dinner. Did you get that in the first reading? It kind of went by quickly. Then they sat down and ate dinner. They do this unspeakable thing, and then they sit down to dinner while their brother Joseph is lying there just 10, 15 yards away, stunned, waiting to become dinner for some creature who makes the rounds of holes like this one after dark. They sit down in that, familiar family circle, and one of them says to another, Reuben, would you please pass me the pita and a few of Mom's pickled peppers? Well, this happens all the time. I got an email this week from Sojourners magazine. The title was, Who Would Jesus Cut from Medicaid? It said that 5.6 million people have been removed from the rolls just since February due to votes by mostly Christian, I almost said criminal, Christian state legislators. Many of the removed, of course, are children. The total this year will likely reach 15 million. And I'm guessing that most, if not all, of those legislators sat down that evening to a first-class Washington, D.C. dinner. And they went to church the next Sunday, and they bowed their heads in prayer and gave no thought to the people whose lives they worked so hard all week to crush. It's appalling. Of course, they consider themselves pro-life, except in the case of the lives of children who happen to have been born. Now, in the second part of the Joseph story that I want to highlight this morning is also something you can easily pass over too quickly. It's something that seems tangential until you read the whole saga of Joseph a second time and realize what an important hinge it is in the flow of events. It will seem a small thing, this thing. When isolated, Joseph is on an errand in the beginning of the story for his father. He is sent by his father out to locate his brothers, make sure they're okay, which is fairly ironic, right? He's about to go back home because he can't find them when a nameless man happens along and tells them that he overheard his brothers say that they were on their way to a place called Dothan. It's mentioned by name, Dothan, D-O-T-H-A-N. That's the piece of the puzzle I want you to note here. It's very small, as I said, almost consequential, but in reality, it makes all the difference in the world. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner put me onto this years ago at a seminar I attended. Kushner made a lot of the unnamed man in the story He said, without him there would be no Joseph story. Joseph would not be thrown into the pit and then sold into slavery in Egypt. He would not have ended up in prison then in Egypt, if you remember that part of the story. He would not have then come to the attention of Pharaoh. He would not then have risen to a position of authority in Egypt where he would be able to rescue his people and the Egyptian people too from starvation during a famine that Joseph, saw coming. Without that unnamed man telling Joseph his brothers were over there in Dothan, there would not have been any Jews left alive in Egypt. And because of that, there would have been no Exodus, no Moses, no Israel, no King David, no Jerusalem, no Protestant Reformation, no Jesus, no Southminster Presbyterian Church, no Welcome Back Sunday. You'd be reading the paper. All because of one nameless man who said, I think I heard they said they were going over to Dothan. Okay, that's literature, right? That's also biblical history. But think about it for a minute. So many of the people who make the most profound difference to us in our little lives walk on to the stage of our life for only a moment or maybe an hour, and then they walk off it a minute later, never to be seen again. Then days or weeks or months or maybe years or decades later, we look back and we realize how important a part they played in our story. And we say, I didn't even catch her name. I didn't even catch her name. Only recently I saw how similar Joseph's story is to my own family's story. I'd never put this together before. My own great-great-grandmother, Catherine McGee, was born in 1834 in Derry, Northern Ireland. She married a man named William Boyd, and together they immigrated to Pennsylvania. And when gold fever struck her husband, he headed west, promising not to forget her. He promised also that he'd eventually send for her. Well, I know he wrote her at least one letter, because in it he enclosed a check for $50, quite a lot of money in 1850, I guess, drawn on a bank in San Francisco. But she couldn't cash it. I know this because I have the uncanceled check in my collection of family memorabilia. Well, at some point, she made her way with her only son, Charlie, to New York, where she boarded a ship and sailed down to the Isthmus of Panama, which the two of them crossed on muleback, dodging typhus along the way. They took another ship to San Francisco and then rode out to Grass Valley, where she spoke to a man who had heard a rumor that said that her husband, he thought, was now prospecting up near a town called Igo, west of Reading. He was just like the nameless man in the Joseph story who said, I think I heard they went over to Dothan. Well, she caught up with her husband, Bill, and then and there they picked up where they left off and expanded their family. And I was charmed by the story when I was first told it decades ago, and then I realized recently that, struck by the realization that but for her tenacity, I wouldn't even be here this morning. My great-great-grandfather, their next son, was the result of her finding her husband. Because this little woman would not accept abandonment and life in exile, but went alone to a new world, riding a mule, I am here. That is my heritage. And you know, it's also the heritage of everybody in this room. I mean, somewhere behind everybody is a Catherine McGee who would not allow life to steamroll her. And also, let's not forget the nameless person who pointed her somewhere when she came to a dead end, right? Now, besides that nameless man or woman who played a key role in our birth or survival, there's also, other nameless people who came into our lives mid-course, just for a moment, and changed its trajectory. Here's the story of one of those. Lynn in Illinois tells her own story of one such person. Again, somebody that we all have in our life. She says, I had left behind my boyfriend John in Boston to go to graduate school in Illinois. But I wrote him every day, worried he'd find someone new in my absence. Though I missed him, I was enjoying the respite from all the parties and weekend trips and sporting events he dragged me to. I was spending more time on things that nourished me, walks in the woods, needlework, foreign films. When the graduate program became overwhelming, I dropped out. But I stayed in the small college town for a while, reluctant to give up the picturesque life I had there. Finally, encouraged by John's emotional pleas to come back to him, I decided to return to Boston. I slid into a bus seat in St. Louis, feeling like a failure and not sure how I felt about John. I loved his deep brown eyes and playfulness and his moral integrity. He had the courage to speak the truth when others were afraid, so why wasn't I more eager to get back to him? I changed buses in New York City, and a studious-looking boy sat down next to me. He was going to graduate school in Boston, he said, and so was his fiancée. They enjoyed the same movies, took long walks in the woods together, told each other everything. My relationship with John seemed inadequate by comparison. I told the boy about my confusion, and he advised me to pay attention to how I felt the moment I saw John in the bus station. When I got off the bus in Boston, John was waiting on a bench, looking tired and sloppy. His hair was too long, his shirt tail was hanging out, and when he greeted me, he seemed awkward and unsure. I felt the same way. At the apartment, we argued. I wanted to wait tables for a while. John thought I should use my degree to become a professional something he wasn't himself. He was beginning to seem less moral and more judgmental. In the days that followed, he watched sports and got together with his friends. I tagged along, but something was missing. The boy on the bus, I didn't even know his name, had taught me to pay attention to what I felt. A year later, I moved back to Illinois alone. The nameless boy on the bus alerted her, made all the difference in the world. How many people have helped us on a bus? How many people have we helped on a bus or a train or an airplane or who knows where? And we'll never know it. And who did you meet when you were in a vulnerable place in your life, flailing about, maybe very young, unsure how to resolve something big you knew wasn't right, but you couldn't quite find the key you needed to get through a new door? None of us is everything to ourselves. There are these invisible lines of connection between us and others running right through the aisles of this church and from here to every place on the globe. You hardly ever see these lines, but the air is thick with them. Fate, providence. Do you believe in this? Some people believe that there are no chance encounters. A fateful rendezvous occurs, and how did that happen? Two people got up that morning with no expectation, no idea what might cross their path that day. But one of them was mightily in need of some guidance, and the other was being ready to be a very special messenger. As I said earlier, this story of Joseph isn't just a story, it's a saga. That is, it's a series of stories strung together the way all of our lives are composed of a series of strung together stories. Here's what I mean. If you sat down and wrote down a chronological account of your life, and then read it back slowly and thoughtfully and revised it to make sure you got it right, you would, I imagine, see how you might impose a kind of order to it. You would see definite chapters. You'd see clear beginnings and endings that have a certain logic to them, right? Trust me, you would. Now, here's something else you would see if you took the time to do this. You would see, as those who have read the story of Joseph from beginning to end see, that the further you go along in life, the less sure you might be about whether particular things that happen along the way are good things or bad things. That changes as you get older. If it doesn't, you aren't paying attention. Whether they're the result of good luck or bad luck, right? Well, of course, when tragic things happen, and they do sometimes, they're easy to identify as bad, and they usually stay bad. But some transitions, job losses, career promotions or demotions, moving to a new town, the end of a relationship, every one of those can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how it all plays out and what it leads to, or what it might teach you about life or about yourself. I want to close with a famous Chinese fable I imagine you've heard before. See if you remember it. A farmer's horse runs off. Neither he nor his son can catch this horse. His neighbor says, "How bad for you?" The farmer says, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Next day, the horse returns with a mare, a beautiful wild mare. The neighbor says, how good for you. Now you have 2 fine horses. And again, the farmer says, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Well, the next day, the farmer's son tries to tame this new wild mare. And in the process, he's thrown and he breaks his leg very badly. And the neighbor's response is, how bad for you. Such sorrow. And the farmer, with tears in his eyes this time, says, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Next day, the army comes through town and conscripts the neighbor's 2 sons against their will and leaves the farmer's son, who has the day before broken his leg. The neighbor, through his own tears, says, how lucky you are, you still have your son. And the farmer says, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Which he has to say, right? Because this is a story without an ending, because our lives are so infinitely complex. But we don't always act as if we know this. We look at the state of our life today and count up our regrets and blessings, maybe a little too early, almost always a little too early. Some people, are trapped by regret for years, decades, a lifetime. Oh, if only that one thing had worked out differently, we might say. Or if only I had made a different choice back when I was 21. It is so much better when we are gentle with ourselves about such things. It is so much better when we are patient about the unfolding of our own personal sagas. Well, before I say amen, I see you moving in place, you music people. think first, let me take a moment to invite you to meditate a moment. Think of something that happened in your life that at the time seemed to you to be, really bad, or maybe even the end of the world. Maybe it seemed that was that way because, you were very young and life hadn't yet opened up for you. So can you go back to that time, and things just were so fraught? And then you think, because it played out the way it did, something else, maybe something quite wonderful at least more appropriate to you, was given room to happen. Think about the life you might have had if that hadn't happened. Now think about something a little closer to you in time that you might feel badly about even now. Is it possible that that thing might open a new door you haven't yet considered? Amen. Please be seated. Now, as is our habit, let me invite you to share any concerns you have, prayers of joy, or others.
Today is our church anniversary. We first attended Southminster 12 years ago today.
Right. Woo. 7 years. Let's make it a baker's dozen at least.
Yes, today is the date of Judy Money's memorial service. And I would like all our prayers to be with John throughout this day and always.
Thank you. That's darling. Thank you very much for that.
Hi, my dad's back in the emergency room, so we're all waiting to see what that'll bring. So,
Okay. Remembering your dad.
I'd like to ask for prayers for my wonderful next-door neighbor, Kathy, who lost her younger brother suddenly at the age of 42 2 weeks ago. And she's really having a hard time.
Sure. Let's join in prayer.
Scott?
Yeah. Oh.
I have a good friend who has recently learned that her husband has a pretty bad case of cancer in more than one part of his body, and just would like prayers for him and her.
And her. Okay. All right. Let's join in prayer then. Dear God, first we lift up the people in beautiful Morocco. When these things happen and people are still rushing to find survivors, our thoughts are inevitably with those who are under rubble, those who have suddenly lost their dearest ones, any idea of the future. We thank you for the fact that there are often teams in place and people of goodwill who risk their lives, and we pray you'd be with them and those who are suffering. And we remember those we have mentioned already who in similar cases are concerned about their loved ones or who have sustained sudden losses. We stand here, we sit here in this room, so fortunate to be together in this community. Glad that we have support beyond the usual family structure to help us at times like this. So our thoughts go to the Mooney family and others who we are connected to, the Shearers who lost a special one. We think of those who are making decisions that are so important to our nation and its future. And we pray your hand might somehow be working for truth and justice and beauty now and always. We lift up all of these things, remembering of the one who called us to prayer as we say our corporate prayer today. Eternal Spirit, earth maker, pain bearer, life giver, source of all that is and that shall be, Father and Mother of us all, loving God in whom is heaven, may the hallowing of your name echo through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From trial too great to endure, spare us. From the grip of all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. We will once again receive our morning's offering. Now you're all fluent Zulu speakers. Life is short, and we have not much time to gladden the hearts of those who traveled away with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and may the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds today and tomorrow and down all your days. Our service is ended, but we invite you to linger and to stay for the potluck, whether you've brought anything or not. There'll be enough, as there always is.